My name is Jaylene Correa, and today I'm going to be talking about how to motivate your child to learn. You might think that only certain people use reinforcers or use certain things to motivate children, but the truth is that we all need reinforcers in our life in order to do our daily activities. You go to work because you get paid, you work with your children because you want to see them grow, and we all do certain things in order to get approval from our peers or our superiors. So, what are some of the behaviors that you would like your child to do in your home environment or in your school environment? Maybe you want to see them eat with the family, spend more time with their siblings, maybe brush their teeth independently, ask for items, be polite to other people. These are all things that you might want to see your child do and you're not sure how to motivate them. So let's think about getting dressed in the morning. In order for reinforcers to be effective, you need to make sure that they're being delivered immediately and contingent upon the behavior so that they have to happen right after the behavior. So if we're thinking about getting dressed in the morning, we need to think about we're going to reinforce the student or the child right after they get dressed and based on getting dressed, not based on any other behaviors. And when you're thinking about rewarding your child or using a reinforcement, you want to do it based on behaviors that you want to see increase more. You might think, well, my child should do this on their own, but the truth is that a lot of children need extraneous reinforcement because social praise or just saying good job might not be good enough for them. But these are behaviors that we could work on. So what are some reinforcers that you use? Throughout the school day or throughout your day, you might use praise, you might use food, you might say stuff like, well, first eat your dinner and then you could have your ice cream. Maybe activities. You know, if you do good in school, then we could go to the zoo. Or food. There's a couple of different reinforcers that you could use. So let's think about praise first. Praise is things like good job, way to go, you're a superstar. These things are good because they can be experienced immediately right after a behavior. So if you're teaching your child to get dressed, right after they've gotten dressed, you could say, great job, I love the way that you put on your pants by yourself. They're also good because they can be very specific so that you are teaching your child exactly what you expect them to do. I like the way you put on your clothes in the right order or you put it the right way. Social reinforcers are the most practical reinforcers because they can be used all the time wherever you're at. If you want your child to be polite with somebody else right after they said thank you or excuse me, you say good job being polite. It's important to know that with some children you're gonna have to pair toys, foods, and activities with praise in order for praise to mean something. Another type of reinforcer to use is food. Food is naturally reinforcing for most people, so again, you could tell your child first eat dinner and then have ice cream if ice cream is something that's reinforcing for them. You could also just use different types of candy or even juices, things that they might like. It's good because if the child is doing something that they like, it's also good to use because if the child is doing what you want them to do, that behavior that you want to see increase, you could give it to them and they don't have to give it back to you, so it doesn't have to be relinquished. Some things to keep in mind when you're using food is that it's not very convenient because if you're teaching a child to do something and it's a part of a sequence, if you're giving the food then, you might break up the sequence of the behaviors. And also the value of food can change with time. It's important to note that our main goal is to use praise. You want your child to be socially reinforced for everything that they're doing. But at the beginning, you might want to pair the food with attention so that later on attention is as reinforcing as food. Another type of reinforcers are activities. Activities have to be delivered immediately. If you tell your child, well, get dressed and tomorrow I'll take you to the park, your child is going to be less likely to do that because the reinforcers are not delivered immediately. But if you tell your child, get dressed so we could go outside and play, your child might be a little bit more motivated to do so. It's important to think about The fact that if you're using toys in order to reinforce your child, you're going to have to take those toys away after a couple of minutes, and that might create a problem for some of your students. If you're working an activity that's long, sometimes using stickers to see the passing of time might be a good way for your child to see that they're doing a good job, they're getting something, and the activity that they want to do is coming in a little while. So how can you identify what are some good reinforcers for your child? First, you should just take a look at what your child likes to do. Observe them throughout the day. Are they likely to play with a specific toy? Do they like to do certain activities? Maybe they just like to spend time outside. Maybe they really like to eat certain foods. You should make a list of all the things that your child likes to do and that they gravitate towards, so that you could use those things as a reinforcer for the behaviors that you want to see increase. It's also recommended to do a reinforcement assessment just to see all the possible reinforcers that you could use throughout the day. Remember that we all work for reinforcers. We all go to work because we want to get paid. We want our bosses to recognize our good jobs. Our children are the same way. They want to be recognized for doing their daily activities, and they need to be motivated to do certain things that they might not want to do because it's either hard or because they don't like to do them. So now that you've identified a couple of reinforcers, we talked about praise, we talked about food, we talked about activities. We also talked about how to deliver those reinforcers. You want to deliver them based on a behavior that you want to see increase. So if you want to see your child be more polite, or if you want to see your child get dressed independently or doing homework independently at your house, you know now how to deliver those contingently. Now we need to think about how to fade reinforcers. It's important to know that rewards are used to teach behaviors. So you're delivering the rewards when you're teaching a behavior. Once you taught the behaviors, you need to maintain the behaviors. So we taught the child how to get dressed. Now we need to maintain that behavior, because we know that if we just stop reinforcing, your child might go back to not wanting to get dressed, and therefore there's no motivation for getting dressed. As your child becomes more successful in performing the behavior you want to see increase, the reinforcer should be faded out. So now, how can you fade those reinforcers? You've already taught the behavior. The child knows how to do it. Now we need to fade those reinforcers and be able to maintain the learned behaviors. We need to think about that at one point getting dressed was hard for your child. So we can't just get rid of all the reinforcer. You're not going to stop saying good job or stop delivering your reinforcement right away, because your child might stop getting dressed because it might become hard for them and there's no motivation to getting dressed. What we need to do is try to identify some natural reinforcements in the environment to maintain the behavior. This might be hard for some behaviors, but for most behaviors, they can be maintained through the environment. So things like using an umbrella. We use an umbrella because when you open up an umbrella, you stop getting wet. When you're removing a reinforcer, you can use the analogy of a vending machine versus a slot machine. If you were reinforcing a behavior every time and then you stop reinforcing it, it would be like putting money in a vending machine. After one or two, you're gonna stop doing it because you know the vending machine is broken. A slot machine, you could keep putting money in, and then you'll get a reward every once in a while. So in order for us to maintain behaviors, you need to give reinforcers on a variable schedule. So every 2, every 3 times the child does it in order to maintain that behavior. But you cannot stop giving those reinforcers, because then the behaviors will stop occurring.